Well, good day, everyone. And I would like to begin our session, and I thank you all for sticking around for the end of the day and the last presentation today. But what I would like to do, first of all, before I even get into the introduction, is to let you know that we are going to put a poll up right about now, and I would encourage all of you to take a couple of moments while I'm introducing this to take this poll slash, it's a quiz, it's a test, and I'll give you the answers at the very end of the presentation today. So the session that we're embarking on here is really about the importance of sustainability, and is going green far enough? And in this day where the focus is squarely on the pandemic disaster that's ravaging lives and livelihoods around the world, we concentrate our daily efforts on staying safe, keeping our families safe, protecting coworkers and our clients, and evolving our businesses under the duress of the economic impacts of the pandemic. And nowhere is this more apparent than in the restaurant and hospitality sectors. Yet we still sort of yearn for the time before COVID, when life was good and the skies were blue. But that's not really accurate, because once this pandemic is under control, however that happens, we will return to the same disaster that has the potential for enormous human suffering and negative economic impact that will dwarf that of the current pandemic. The issues surrounding climate change and sustainability as a whole are still there, and they're not going away, and in fact, increasing in severity. So this session is intended to not let us lose focus of this reality. We in the hospitality sector have an important role to play in acting sustainably. So we've assembled a diverse panel of experts, 6 of them, who are here to prod us to action through their examples and their inspirations. As chairman of the World Chefs Feed the Planet Committee, which focuses on sustainable action throughout the world, I am so pleased to be moderating this amazing panel today. So, is going green far enough? Do we need to move towards serious action steps? Or do we still have time to talk and think about going green? So, let's see what our panelists have to say. Now, before I begin with our first panelist today, please send in your questions as you think of them, because we'll have a little time at the end to answer, and we'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible. So today we begin with science, and really allowing science to set the stage for our discussions, because science is a guide to illuminate the issues and incite us to action. So our first speaker today is Dr. Brent Loken. And Brent is the global food lead scientist for WWF. And he was the lead author on the Eat Lancet report on food, planet, and health. And his current research includes a report on food consumption patterns in the G20 countries and the potential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, a series of papers that develop national level roadmaps for greenhouse gas mitigation potential from changes in food and agriculture, and an analysis on how sustainable logging in a tropical forest impacts biodiversity. Brent believes, however, that research must be translated into action, and his knowledge to action work includes collaborating with businesses, cities, and nations to set an actionable science-based targets for the food system. And I could go on and on, because Brent, you are an amazing person. So what I'd like to do is, Brent, I believe you have a presentation to sort of help us set the stage. And if you would like to kick that off, I will then answer or ask a couple questions afterwards.
Perfect. Chris, thank you very much for that warm introduction. It's a huge honor to be here. And I'm just going to switch to sharing my screen. And if you could just let me know if it's coming through on your side once I start the share screen.
I believe that did it, yes.
Okay, is this working?
It looks great.
Okay, great. So, what we eat matters. And, I don't want to talk about the problem because we know what the issues are. We know that the Arctic is facing warming at rates that we haven't seen before. And we've got these images of rapidly warming Arctic. We've seen images of the world on fire, and whether it's Brazil, Indonesia, or, other places. We know that we've seen images of biodiversity being lost at rates that we haven't seen for many, many years, millions of years, actually. And we also know that people are getting less healthy and not more healthy. These are all things that we know. We've been bombarded by negative news, I think. But, what is the connection to food? And how does food tie into all these issues? I think the natural connection that most of us face is we know that the connection that the food that we put into our mouths impacts our health. That's a more obvious connection. If we put bad stuff in, it's going to have negative health impacts. But how about the way that we produce food and the impacts that this has on the planet? That's a connection that less of us understand. And I want to walk through the impacts that food has on actual climate change right now. It has impacts on biodiversity loss, water use, and other things, but let's just look at climate change. And I think when we think about climate change, we tend to think about it's about electricity, it's about buildings, it's about industry, it's about transport. Those are the things that we have to change. What we don't know is about 24% of global emissions comes from the food that we eat and how it's produced. It can be broken down to the methane from animals, it can be like the fertilizers that we're putting on fields, it could be from the trees that we cut down to make these fields. That's 24% of the problem that if we don't address food, we're not going to be able to solve it. Now, unfortunately, we're not on track to be able to address this. And if you look at this red line right here, you can see that the red line is going to go up. And current consumption around the world, people are eating a lot more animal source foods. And it's expected to double by 2050 if we stay on track with current rates. So obviously, things have to change. The science is also becoming increasingly clear that there are certain foods that have higher health and environmental impacts. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner here, you can see that animal source foods do have higher health impacts and also higher impacts on water use, biodiversity loss, and also like greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas other foods, more the plant-based foods, the nuts, the vegetables, potatoes, fruits, have lower impacts. But you can see here that shifting towards some foods will be good for people, and it will also be good for also good for like the planet. So what does a diet look like that we should be eating? What would a planetary health diet look like? More or less like this: half of your plate that you should be serving or that we should be eating, it should be composed of fruits and vegetables, a lot of whole grains, a lot of plant-based proteins, unsaturated oils, and not very much dairy and animal source foods. So we need a radical shift away from this thinking about animal source foods and dairy as being the center of the plate, the center of the course, and a shift towards more plant-based whole foods. But unfortunately, there are huge inequalities in the current global food system, massive. And the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted many of these. And if we look at current consumption patterns of the world, it's unequally distributed in terms of who's eating what. And looking at North America here, you can see the orange dashed line. That's the amount of food that we should be eating for each one of the food groups. If it's over that line, it's too much. If it's under that line, it's not actually enough of the food. And you can see in North America, it's huge overconsumption of meats and potatoes and eggs and dairy and chicken. So overconsumption of animal source foods. Underconsumption of a lot of the good stuff. I mean, if you can find nuts and legumes there, good luck. They're extremely small wedges. So a disproportionate focus on some foods and not on the others. But look at what's going on in Africa. A very different story. Underconsumption of almost every single food groups. If you look in South Asia, underconsumption of most foods as well. So you can see here that certain parts of the world are eating too much and other parts of the world are not eating enough. And that's leading to increasing rates of hunger, micronutrient deficiency, and others. So this imbalance is something that we're going to have to start thinking about where and how we start to address this within the food system. Now this is, so who's actually eating most of this food? Whose responsibility is it? And what we're seeing here, if you look at the very left hand of this, here you can see that the richest countries in the world, the G20, are using about 66% of the food emissions that we have to spare. That's only leaving about 34% for the entire rest of the world to use. And as we move forward, and as we think about a redistribution or reuse of how we use food, we're going to have to figure out how we free up some of these emissions and more equally distribute it so that everybody has a right to be able to eat healthy, sustainable food for every single person on this planet. And right now, the G20 is using a disproportionate share. Now, if you look at the food prints of G20 countries, you can see that it's unsustainable. If we all ate like somebody from Argentina, we would need about 7.42 Earths just to be able to support that. Somebody from the US, 5.55, somebody from South Africa, 2.94. But India and Indonesia are still operating within the food print, the current consumption limits that the Earth actually places upon us. But you can see that even within the G20, there's an unequal distribution of who's eating what. Now, I think all of us here, the reason that we joined the session and why this is so important and why we're in the business that we're in is because of food. We all love it. I think we all want to figure out how to make the world a better place, but often struggle with it. How do I reduce greenhouse gas emissions? How do I save biodiversity? How do I protect trees? And sometimes it's really hard because they're intangible concepts that it's really hard to pinpoint that one action. But that's the great thing about food is it gives us a power. The power is on our plates. By shifting your diets, by changing your diets, you can have a positive impact on your health. It's good for the planet. You reduce greenhouse gas emissions, protect biodiversity. And really it's that single action that is probably the single greatest action that we can have. With that, I would like to thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions, Chris, that you might have.
Wonderful. So I'm just going to make one comment and one really fast question. I think one of the things that was so, I guess, earth-shattering about the whole Eat Lancet report was that really individual nutrition, what's good for me individually is good for the planet. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, what's good for your health just happens to be good for the planet. I mean, that's really a win-win, idea is that by shifting it, and if you shift towards more plant-based diets, you feel better, right? And it's also good for like the planet. So it truly is a win-win scenario.
Excellent. So when we come back at the very end, I'm going to ask you a question about what do we do in the hospitality business with the information you just gave us. So think about that, and I'm going to be circling back to it at the very end. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our next speaker. And our next speaker is Christina Rennie. And Christina is the executive director at Food for Soul, a non-for-profit organization dedicated to building healthier and more equitable food systems. A former journalist, Christina works closely with founders Chef Massimo Bottura and Laura Gilmore to expand the network of refettorios, which are 8 innovative community kitchens active in Italy, Brazil, UK, France, and Mexico. This is one very busy lady who's doing some great stuff around the world. So Christina, are you on with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful, there you are. So just some questions. So tell us a little bit more about Food for Soul. It's such an amazing organization. Tell us about it as founder and what you do, please.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for this invitation. It's an honor for us to tell a bit of what we do to this network. So Food for Soul is a nonprofit organization, as you said, founded by Chef Massimo Bottura and Laura Gilmore in 2016. So Massimo and Lara come from the hospitality industry. They have a restaurant, a 3 Michelin star restaurant here in Modena, in Italy, in the north, as well as other restaurants in Modena, in Florence, in Dubai, and in LA. So coming from the hospitality industry in 2015, we launched the first refectory, that is this community kitchen, as you mentioned, and that focuses in recovering food waste and transform it into healthy meals that are served to the most vulnerable people in our communities. So this project, we started there, and as you mentioned, we're now in different countries. So we have 8 active projects by today, and we're working in further expansion around the world. For us, what is key about these community kitchen models is that they are thought around three guiding principles, as we call it. One is the value of ideas, because we believe that we taken the professional skills of many people around the world and many different disciplines and areas of work. We build better projects, no? So for this, we collaborate with not only chefs, but also architects, non-profit organizations, social sector. Then the second one would be the power of beauty, because collaborating with artists, architects, we renovate these spaces that usually are abandoned or underused, and we transform it into a welcoming space for the whole community. We believe that beauty has that power to change our day. And then the third one is the value of hospitality. This is also why we're here, no? Coming from the hospitality industry, the refectorios are places where we serve community, no? Where we take this attention to detail and passion for quality into a community project. So these are it's a very specific example on how hospitality industry can give, no? Back to the community.
I can tell that you have no passion for this, huh? It's really exciting. So food waste is something that has been, you know, front and center in a lot of the discussions on sustainability. But you've combined food waste and community. What is that? What does that look like? How do you do that?
So, well, as Brett mentioned also before, we have so many challenges around the world, no? Connected with our food system, and food waste is one of these specific examples, no? So I also saw in the presentation in the slide before we started to speak that they also, you know, like express a third of all our food production around the world, it's being wasted. While we have an estimated of 2 billion people around the world that don't have access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. And that's a huge challenge that we have. So when it comes to food waste, I think it's also interesting because we just recently started to speak about food waste, no? Also in our industry. And what has been very important for us is to also learn in order to act. And find the best solutions, no? And propose the best solutions. So for example, there's different ways of food being wasted around the world. So one thing would be food loss, and another different thing is food waste. For example, food loss happens when harvesting. But food waste, it's more around the retail and consumption level. So this is where we have decided to focus as a nonprofit organization on the food waste part. This is why we recovered this food on the retail part, but also we show through the examples of chefs that are invited to cook at these refectorios and transforming this food and the resources that otherwise would have been wasted into healthy and good meals that everyone wants to eat. So here, one other like interesting things is that sometimes we receive requests from people around the world that want to come and book at the refectorio to eat. And we tell them, you can come, but you volunteer. Come with us, cook with us in the kitchen, or serve at the tables to our guests. And after that, you can come and share a meal with us. And I think that this is also another interesting point. Our guests are the most vulnerable, as I said, people in the community. So we work together with nonprofit or social assistance organizations to decide our guest group because we want to put them at the center. The idea is to create inclusive projects where these beautiful meals are dedicated to those, because it's about dignity and creating a place where these people are also members of our community and they have a value for us.
That's fantastic. So so the chefs come in and cook with you. So do they then take the information they've learned about food waste and do they put that into practice back in their restaurants? Have you seen evidence of that?
Well, yes. Look, I've seen different levels of reaction, which has been also interesting, because when we invite them to cook, of course, right now it's an established project, but a lot of chefs don't have an idea, or a lot of people in general don't have the idea of how much we waste and what is that we waste. So when we recover this food that arrives to the refectorio, it's perfect. Sometimes it's just like ripping tomatoes, you know, and a chef look at this and says, really? Was this gonna be wasted? And you said, yes. Ah, but I could do an amazing tomato sauce with this. And I'm like, go ahead, this is why we're here. And then I think it's about seeing it. This is why we say also that Food for Soul's mission is to shine light on invisible potential, on food, people, and places. Because it's sometimes we make invisible the food waste because we hide it. Don't recognize specifically what is there. So this way of having reflectores creating actions with chefs has make them see, okay, this is what is wasted. Or for example, chefs that have said, oh, can you send me in advance the list of ingredients? And we say, we don't have a list of ingredients. We create the daily menu according to what we receive and we recover. And that's a challenge, no? But it's a beautiful challenge because after they cook the first time there, maybe one that was a bit more nervous says, oh, wow, it's so beautiful being able to cook with just what we arrives here and what we have. So it's also these chefs putting their skills and their creativity, you know, like and reconnecting with what like hospitality is about. It's about transforming these resources and taking care of people.
What a beautiful model that brings together, you know, serving vulnerable population and frankly teaching chefs how not to waste food, which is huge. Just a real quick question for you. Along the way, I mean, you're working in 8 different places. Did you have any snags along the way? Was it always perfect setup and no problems, or how did that go for you?
Well, no. I think that when you're trying to do something that is new and you go out of your comfort zone, of course, you're going to have face challenges. And this was the case. We have built this model that it's innovative, that has a different approach. And I think that sometimes the struggle for us was that people always ask us about numbers and wouldn't understand why we don't only focus on numbers. We don't do huge numbers at the refectorios in terms of numbers of meals. There are numbers which are important, but we want to also reconnect what is behind this, you know, the stories and the cultural part behind it. And we decided as a nonprofit that our focus and contribution was around culture and around quality and building these spaces that are beautiful and where maybe a meal takes a bit more of effort, but the result for our guests and also for the volunteer that serves it is a different way of impact.
That's great. And of course, chefs can always volunteer. So thank you for your time. I'll come back to you at the end and I have some questions for you also. So let's jump to our thank you very much, Christina. Let's jump to our next presenter and sort of taking that educational cue from Christina. And we're going to jump squarely into the world of education. And I'm going to ask that Sun Pao Voon joins us right now. And Chef Sun is currently a chef and teaching fellow at the School of Hospitality of Sunway University. He's also the vice president of the Professional Culinaire Association of Malaysia. As a firm believer of sustainability education, Chef Sun diligently promotes the World Chef Sustainability Education for culinary professionals as part of the students' learning modules. And he's also currently working on a version of the curriculum that brings in sort of a lot of the local experiences. So Chef, welcome, and thank you for being with us today. Are you there? I don't see you.
Yes, hi.
There you are, wonderful. It's always fun to do this digitally.
Yes.
So you're part of the educational world in culinary and hospitality. So let's focus just for a little bit on culinary. So you teach sustainable cooking, but how do you do that, and how do you define sustainable cooking when you're teaching it to your students?
Okay, good evening from Malaysia. Thank you very much, Chris. To define sustainable cooking, first we need to have an idea what this sustainability education is all about. Yeah. 2 years ago, I remember having a call with Chris. He introduced me to this curriculum. I was worried in the first place because sustainability is such a big word. Just to define sustainability, yeah, sustainable development has the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It's a very big word. Yeah. So, however, after I study into the 7 chapters and go through the session with Chris, we realized that actually we've been doing this all the while. You know, in kitchen, we always remember to switch off the tap of the water tap, you know, looking at the usage of electricity and so on. But this curriculum put action. So in Sunway University, we have adapted the curriculum as part of the students' learning module. Yeah, they are being taught the theoretical component, which includes the overview of the sustainability in food service industry, especially culinary. Of course, this includes current issues and solutions in agriculture, animal husbandry, seafood, energy, water, and waste management. Yeah. However, students will ask, why is it important for them to learn? You know, why is it important for them to learn? They just want to learn to cook. You see, that's why in class we incorporate the theoretical component now. We transfer this knowledge and then we adopt it to sustainable practices in the students' hands-on culinary class, because they learn by doing. They learn by doing. Yeah. So this actually gives an opportunity for them to explore and realize that it's actually what we have been doing. So in order to define sustainable cooking is basically to look into all these elements, which is something chefs has been doing for many years. If you remember, I remember back in college, if we were to throw away the bottom of the carrot or the potato after we do turning potato, we will get a knock on the head by the chef. So it's in there. So sustainable cooking is to look into all these components going in together.
Excellent. And so what I love to hear there is a couple things. First of all, it's about action. We're talking about action today. So it's not just a theoretical thing that they're learning, but they're actually doing it throughout their education. Now, let me ask you a question. Maybe this is slightly political, but you know, you're part of a much larger university. Does the entire university follow that sort of sustainability lead, or are you kind of doing your own thing in a bubble?
You see, in Sunway University, which is part of the Sunway Education Group, it's dedicated to championing sustainability within and around the campus. This aim by giving in sustainable practices. Yeah, it aims at nurturing the community around to act socially responsible towards the consumption.
Excellent.
Let me give you one example of the project is being done in the university itself. Say no to plastic and the last straw campaign. You know, it discourages the use of single-use plastic like cutleries, you know, or food packaging. Yeah, because it's the aspiration of our founder and chairman of the Sunway Group, Tan Sri Javicha, to create a sustainable integrated city, which we are all part of this ecosystem. So.
Excellent. Now, your graduates, your students are about to graduate, having done this curriculum for the first time. What do you expect of them? What are they going to go out and change the world right away?
It's very hard for them to change the world, but when I expect them, when they do their work, they will realize that you know, I can use this. How can I assist to cut down the wastage of the electricity, you know, to rethink of how much plastic we want to use, because we really use a lot of plastic in culinary, whether in food packing, you know, when the storage, or if let's say, what else can we do? So this education gives them to rethink and for them to redefine sustainability towards themselves.
That's wonderful. Well, Chef, just one last really fast question. There's maybe some educators listening right now. Any tips for them?
We would like to encourage all the culinary educators to take up this curriculum. Yeah, it will really empower and enhance the students' learning experience. Incorporate these practices in your practical session. You've already done so, but you don't realize it. Yeah, it's the small steps that makes a difference. You know, switch off the water, switch off the gas. You know, we don't let the electricity run the whole day. You know, just reach out to Lynn at the World Chef's office or to Chris at Feed the Planet to know more about this. They are happy to assist you. You know, they're happy to assist you. For formulations, just reach out to us at the Professional Culinary Association, and we are ready to share our best practice.
That's great, Chef. Thank you so very much, and keep doing what you're doing, because we're changing the world one student at a time. They're the future, so keep it up. So we're gonna jump now to a whole different part of the hospitality sector, and that is the equipment part of what we do. So I'd like to introduce Alberto Donata, and Alberto has spent his whole professional life, which is amazing, by the way, at Electrolux Professional, starting as a product manager after graduating as an electrical engineer from university. and then followed by positions in marketing, industrial side of things, R&D, sales, general manager. He spent 5 years in the USA to start up the operations in my country. He's headed the professional business since 2009. And when we were talking, he said, his comment was, I love this industry and I love the company that I work for, which you don't always hear from people. So that was Alberto, that was really encouraging. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Welcome.
So I'm going to jump right into it here. So when people hear sustainability, they tend to think of food or maybe food waste. But, I find that rarely people think about energy and water and how that intersects the world of sustainability. So, but that's exactly what I want to ask you about in terms of equipment.
Yeah, you are perfectly right. When I talk about sustainability, if I'm asked to describe sustainability, I'm using an example like a table with 3 legs. And you know that a table with 3 legs, they need to have 3 legs that are equivalently important. And the 3 legs for sustainability are people, planet, and obviously also the profit. So clearly the waste, if we now talk about the profit, wasting food is a way to create additional profit for the operators. But in reality, when these people are running their operation, they are using a lot of energy, a lot of water, gas, any kind of things. So to work on profitability, to work on the sustainability, we have to address all these 3 areas in an equivalent way. And we have to work clearly for the profit. I remember at the beginning when we were talking about sustainability, we were focusing only on the green aspect of sustainability. Then the accessibility was low. But when we talk about people that are running their business, we have to talk about also the profit. So the impact that making these choices is having on their businesses.
Excellent. And so I assume the equipment that you're making today takes into account how to use less energy, use less water, be more efficient. But when you talk to professionals who are buying this equipment, because we all have to do that sometimes, are they sort of asking those questions also? Are they concerned about that?
Yeah, more and more, I have to say, more and more. And clearly the more structured companies, so if you talk about corporations that are running hotel chains or restaurant chains, they are more sensible about that. Because it's a big part of the cost that they are running. Obviously, the food is the first one, so the food that they buy, people, and for this reason, it's important also to have products that are caring about the people that are using them, but also the energy bill, including the water, is an important one. Because remember that water, people think that is between brackets for free, but in reality, water you have to heat up, so you're using again energy. If you're using water in a laundry machine or dishwashers, you are adding detergent, and detergent has a cost. And more water you use, more detergent you are using. So reducing all these elements is having an important benefit for operators. They have to say that the sensibility is growing a lot. So many customers are now thinking about what we call lifetime cost. So when you buy a product, typically you look at the cost of the product, the ticket, how much is costing to me. But then you don't look at how much is going to cost during the life while operating the product. And that is, by the way, is much more than just the ticket cost. And more customers are starting to think of that. So not a really short-term vision, but are more long.
Fantastic. Now, you did bring up the topic of laundry, and we are talking to the hospitality sector. And obviously in the hospitality sector, there's a lot of laundry that's being done. So you also are producing machines for laundering products. What's happening in that world right now? I mean, are we able to achieve less energy, less water inputs in that?
Absolutely. And I have to say that laundry appliances are probably more advanced for what sustainability aspects are concerned than even the kitchen ones. They've been, probably because they are more sophisticated, that there is a lot of electronic control in this kind of appliances. And we've been able to, in particular the new generations, we've been able to reduce significantly the consumption of the water, and as a consequence, the consumption of energy, detergent, and all the other stuff. So a laundry operation has a pretty significant impact on the overall sustainability world.
Wonderful. So one last question for you, and that is advice to those who are buying equipment. What would you tell them to do?
I think it's the way I said it in the meaning, don't just look at the ticket, the cost, the pure purchasing cost of the product, but start really to ask if you don't know it, if it is not presented to you, but ask how much is going to cost to run this product along the life. Please do remember that we produce products in this industry that are working tools and are working for years in our operation. So they have a cost. Look at that one. Have an overall vision about the investment you are doing. This is what we do in the factory. And the restaurant at the end is a small factory and should be treated exactly the same way.
I love your emphasis on profit, because, you know, one of the things here, I think that's so important when it comes to, you know, saving or conserving energy and conserving water is it's good for the planet overall, but it's also good for, you know, my profit.
Absolutely.
And so it fits beautifully together. So thank you very much for joining us. Stick around. We'll probably have some questions at the end as well. So now we're going to jump over to Ingrid. Hello.
Hello.
Ingrid Ilmark is joining us, and Ingrid is the head of the Electrolux Food Foundation, which is a non-for-profit that aims to inspire and promote sustainable cooking and eating. So together with employees and partners like the Feed the Planet partnership with World Chefs, the foundation runs projects around the world. A lot of projects. And the goal is to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. So Ingrid, welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you on the other end of my computer. So in a few words, tell us a little bit about the Electrolux Food Foundation and what its connection and role is with sustainability.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. The Food Foundation is part of what Electrolux does, because a company can be commercial, but a company also has a role of being non-commercial and using its resources and dedicated employees and network to do good for society. So that's part of the role of the foundation. And for, like example, what do we do then? We can, as companies, of course, influence policies and regulations. It's not what the foundation does, but it's a non-commercial thing that companies can do to contribute to a better world. And like Alberto was talking about, sustainable innovation is also a contribution. But through our employees and through our partners like World Chefs, we do other things that are totally non-commercial, but it's about inspiring and educating in a sustainable lifestyle. So sustainable cooking and eating, that's what we focus on, and we also support people in need.
Can you give us a couple examples of how you work with your partners?
Sure. Well, for instance, together we have educated more than 30,000 kids around the world in over 30 countries, from Brazil to Malaysia, about sustainable food habits. And they are also the future, not just the chefs to be. And they are super strong influences on their families, because these are kids of the age of 8 to 12. That's one example. And together with you guys, we also educate vulnerable people. So a little bit like what Christina's doing, we do for also vulnerable people, and teach them about, and like Soon does also, because it's the same curriculum, on sustainable cooking. So we educate for employment in the favelas of Brazil, or immigrant women in Sweden, and orphanage young people in Moscow, and so on and so forth. And one thing that we will do tomorrow, actually, in our partnership also with World Chefs and with Isaac, is we will do a free lesson on sustainable habits. That I would encourage everyone to check this out. We'll try to put the link to it in the flow here. But that's also to inspire the younger people of the world, the young adults, but anyone is welcome. But I think that's also something that we all can use to promote and encourage our friends and family.
I love the focus on young people, because we know if you get to the young people, they influence their families. So it's a great way to do it.
Do.
So tell me just a little bit about community and how you do good for the community. I mean, who do you serve? How does that work?
Well, this spring is quite special also because of the corona pandemic season. So actually this year we are working also locally, where we have our employees and we collaborate with the local non-commercial organizations. So we have been able to donate more than 100,000 sustainably cooked meals to COVID-19 affected people. And that's also a global thing. So that's particular for this year.
That's amazing. All right, I just have one really fast question, because we got to keep moving on. Frank is waiting in the wings there for his turn. But just, can you give some advice to the people who are listening, perhaps on this, webcast right now, which, people who have a lot of, significant influence, people who have responsibility in their organizations, you work with a very large organization. Can you speak to them specifically about what their responsibilities are and what they can do to change things sustainably?
Yeah, doing good for the communities is not just good; it's also good for business, because the type of companies that do this, any type of company in the hospitality industry or so, it's that kind of company that attracts the talents. Because it's the type of company you want to work for. It's the type of company you want to buy from and also invest in. So taking on this non-commercial role is also profitable.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We're going to move to our last presenter, and that is Frank Foll. Chef Frank Foll is a former chef owner of a Michelin-starred restaurant and vegetable-focused restaurant in Belgium. And for more than 30 years, he has been passionate about vegetables and fruits as the center of culinary attention. And as such, frankly, he was and continues to be a trendsetter. Today, he is an international consultant on healthy, vegetable-based, plant-based food. He consults, coaches, teaches workshops all over the world. And his efforts have led to the International Online Green Guide We're Smart World, as well as awards for the most forward-thinking plant-based restaurants. And he also rates restaurants by radishes. You can see the radishes on his coat, which is a really fun way of doing it. Frank, it's always a pleasure to have you on here. And so I'm going to jump right in with you. So you've done so much in your career to make plant-based the center of attention. Center of the plate, as we say, way before it was trendy to do so. Why did you do this? Why did you change the way you were cooking?
First, I want to say hi to everybody, and I want to thank you all for the fantastic work you do, Christina, Alberto, Ingrid, and Soon, and Brent, and Chris also. Well, it was a little bit a mind change when I went to Thailand a long time ago. And I've seen over there a kitchen with a lot of vegetables, crispy vegetables, a lot of perfumes, fresh herbs, and so on. And coming from a region in Belgium where vegetables are very important and everywhere, but not on the plate, it was for me an opening. And I was very interested in the way they cooked. And I say, why we don't do this in Belgium? Why we are putting vegetables always on the side of a dish? And even in some restaurants, it's only garnish and we don't eat it. So it's, for me, was it really a mind change to say, we will put it in the center and we'll build around vegetables the dishes. And it can be with meat and fish, but also 100% plant-based.
Fantastic. And so what are your best learnings, you know, from running a plant-based restaurant way before anyone else was really doing it? You know, what advice do you have for chefs who are listening, and maybe potentially, you know, general managers who are listening right now, who are trying to do the same thing or thinking about it? What would you tell them?
That the plant-based way to cook is fantastic, and a very big world that you can learn about it. And once you make this mind change, yeah, you will think total differently, and you will see that with all the culinary techniques you have, with all the possibilities of linking tastes of vegetables and other plant-based ingredients, you can do fantastic things. And today, and that's very important, 30 years ago it was different. Today, people, our guests are asking this. And in Belgium, we say it's about 35, even 40% of the clients, guests who are looking for restaurants where plant-based, not only 100% if you want, but where vegetables are the center of the dish. And so important is that you use the produce in the right season, and then everything is possible.
You know, I love when we've talked before and you've basically said, you know, what happens for many chefs is we start with the animal protein and we figure out what's going to go with it. And from your perspective, you start with the vegetable and figure out what's going to go with it, which is such a radical shift. And it really makes me think of some of the things that Brent said at the very beginning about how we have to be plant-based. So let me ask you, this is, you know, there are countries and parts of this world where you have many, many solid meat eaters, red meat eaters in particular, you know, and maybe vegetables there, you know, don't even sort of exist, right? You know, what do you tell them? What do you tell those chefs in particular about trying to change the world where they live?
I think you have to do it in sort of phases. It's not from tomorrow you don't eat any meat anymore. But and if you go to the think vegetable, think fruit philosophy, we are not saying that you can eat meat or fish. We say you have to go to around 60-65% of plant-based ingredients minimum. And so it gives the possibility that once a week you can eat your steak, you can eat meat if you want, and the other 6 days you are creative with vegetables. So it gives a lot of possibility, and then maybe one day you have the knowledge and also the pleasure of eating vegetables alone and every day.
That's great. One last question for you, then we're going to move to some fast questions here. But so you give annual awards and highlight restaurants around the world that have vegetable-centric menus. What have you learned from these restaurants? I mean, is there like, you know, something where you've walked away from this and said, wow, that was a great idea, or that was something I haven't thought about?
But I'm now traveling everywhere in the world and eating in a lot of restaurants and seeing a lot of changing, and very happy that chefs now are on this plant-based cooking. And yeah, that's a real opening now. Everything is possible, and it's happening everywhere in the world. So that's a very good change, and all these new ambassadors will make it very faster, the change that we want. But yeah, what I see is that a lot, the creativity is coming from these techniques. And you see that before we use 7 techniques maximum. And I don't need a molecular kitchen. We need a natural kitchen, and using the textures of the products and the taste and the flavors and the colors of these products. And that's what I see is now that chefs now has learned to use it. We are going away from the chemical way to cook, but we are back going to the natural way of cooking. And that's very important, I think, for a lot of things.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chef. Now, for the people who are listening to this, just to let you know, and I've been speaking with the organizers, we're going to run over just a few minutes. So stick with us because we're the last presentation of the day. That's one of the advantages of being the last presentation of the day. We can run over a little bit. So I want to just, I have a couple of quick questions, and then, and I think the first one maybe is to Brent specifically. You know, based on science and from all the things you've heard from this panel today, what actions in our everyday work life in this industry matters the most? Have you heard something today that really is, you know, that can make a huge impact? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things we have to wrap our head around is just the scale of ambition that we're talking about. And the title of this is Going Green Enough? And, you know, we have to come to terms with the fact that nibbling at the edges and making small changes is won't be enough right now. So when we're talking about a shift towards plant-based diets, or we're talking about a reduction in food loss and waste, or we're talking about buying more sustainable products, we're talking about doing it quickly, you know, and it can't just be a part of your business. It's got to be the majority of your business. And you know, if we're thinking about individual actions that we can take, it really depends on what it is that you're concerned about. Shifting diets has the greatest impact on greenhouse gas emissions, whereas reducing food loss and waste will save more land, which will reduce pressure on like tropical forests. So really, I mean, I know this is an unsatisfactory answer in some ways, but we have to do it all. And, you know, in addition to wanting to nibble at the edges and just do a little bit, we also want to find that one solution that's going to solve everything. And you know, with this problem, there isn't a single solution. We need all hands on deck. We need ambitious changes to happen. And we've got to do it all. We've got to implement everything, which might seem daunting, but it can be done.
So putting it in a culinary context, we have a plate of food in front of us. And when you eat that plate of food, you don't nibble at the edges, you jump right into the center and consume it with gusto. That's how we have to approach sustainability.
And you consume all of it. You don't throw any in the garbage at the same time.
Very, very, very good. Well, and again, this panel is all about, you know, action, because I agree with you. Everything is interconnected, and we have to get involved. We are running out of time. So one fast question I received here was regarding COVID. And what's happening with COVID in a lot of restaurants is they're doing a lot of takeout food. And the net result there is lots of waste when it comes to takeout containers. Any thoughts about how to do that in a more sustainable way, given the realities of, you know, for a lot of people trying to keep their businesses alive and at the same time trying to be sustainable? Okay.
If you want an answer from me, no problem. I thought you was asking it to somebody.
No, you can all jump in. Sorry.
Okay. No, I think the easiest way is that you come with your pot to the restaurant, and they make some, and they put it inside, and so you can go home. I think that's the easiest way. But in the practice, it's not always possible. So there are plant-based products or packaging today who are more ecology than other one. So maybe that's something, but it's true that we were working in Europe for several years to stop all this plastic that is coming out of those restaurants and supermarkets. And now with COVID, we put it, we lose a lot of years of work because everybody is using a lot of packaging everywhere. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from the panelists on this one?
Yeah,
Brent?
just very quickly. I mean, I think what this points out is how unprepared we are. You know, we want to think that there's a shift away from plastics and everything, but then when a pandemic like this strikes, it really highlights how fragile the system actually is. And, you know, so it's a bit of a wake-up call, I hope, to say that this transition that we have to have towards more sustainable products, whether it's somehow decreasing food loss and waste, has to happen much more quickly. And we're just not even close to being ready yet.
Good answer. Yeah. Okay, so before I'm gonna do a really fast, give each one of you a chance in just a second to give us one thing. Give us one thing that somebody can walk away from this today and do. But while you're thinking of that, really quickly, I want to go back to the poll results here and give you I guess the right answers. So question number one, the right answer is dietary shifts to plant-based foods. Question number two is retail and consumption level. That is the last one there. The next one, which is not part of the World Chefs, is number two, and that is describe the current sustainability issues surrounding poverty and potential solutions. Number four is, I want to be sure I get these all right. So Alberto talked a little bit about this one, and the answer is 15%. So that really is talking about, you know, the short-term versus long-term sort of when you buy stuff. You know, it's not just the cheapest that, you know, initial cost that matters. The next one is, oh, you got it, all of the above. Very good. That is that one. And the very last one, Frank mentioned about the how many techniques he has developed for just cooking vegetables, and the answer is 51. So I encourage you to take a look at that. That's radically shifting the way that we think about cooking vegetables. So with that, I'm just going to ask each one of you just very quickly to give us one thing. So if, you know, the people listening, give them one thing that they can do to get going. So Brent, do you want to kick it off? I know I'm asking you the impossible question. Go.
Yeah, it's actually very simple. Shift your diets, and you can do it today. You know, you can do it in your restaurants, you can do it with whatever business that you do, and you can do it at home with like yourself, your kids, your friends. Do that one action, it'll have a huge impact. So I encourage each one of you today with your next meal, eat more plants. Excellent.
Let's see, Christina.
Well, I think that we have seen a lot of chefs having new initiatives now during the lockdown and also post-lockdown. Initiatives that answer to the emergency. So one thing for me would be let's keep on the action after the emergency, because poverty and food access is going to be still a challenge for us, even harder, like even a more difficult challenge after the emergency. And while doing this, let's start with creating partnerships with people within the system. So let's not do it ourselves. Let's ask the nonprofit associations, the people that are on the front line, what is the real need and how we can contribute. So we don't double efforts, but are integrated into the solution.
Work together. I love it. Chef Soon.
Adopt the culinary curriculum, you know, the sustainability curriculum, you know, take the knowledge you learn, transfer into action. That's
so education is critical. Great.
Yes.
Alberto.
Yeah, I think also the result of the poll is proving that we are not focused on the total really cost of ownership. So something that we can do really tomorrow morning, think about the energy, the water, and whatever is used by the product that we have in our kitchen or laundry appliances. Think about that.
Thank you. Excellent. Ingrid.
Yeah, let's make it easier to make the right choice. So if you have an establishment, put the veggie alternative on top of the menu.
Very nice. I'm sure Frank would agree with that. Frank, go.
Yeah, you have to know that people has to eat every day 500 grams of plant-based products. So chefs learn about it, go for it. There is a new world is opening when you are cooking only with plant-based ingredients. Do it and you will see that your guests are following.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think maybe to wrap this up, my closing thought here is, and I'm going to steal Brent's words here because I think they were great, which is we can't nibble at the edges anymore. It's time for action. It's time for significant action. And it requires all of us to get involved. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So I would like to say a huge thank you to all of the panelists here. This is an amazing firepower, amazing expertise. And I thank you all for taking the time and sharing your knowledge. And I'd like to thank everybody who's been diligently listening at the very end of a day. And I hope these words are transformational for you. And with that, I would like to say thank you, and also to the organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So.
Bye.
Bye-bye.